Hear that sound? I hear that sound. We know what that sound means. Oh, look, we're already down to 110,000 debt by the time we got into the game. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to game number 1 in our best of 3 series between Pbhead and Deathtacticus. Definitely a match we've been looking forward to in our round of 8 of this tournament. Looks like we are going to have plenty of carbon and aluminum and iron available this game. Everybody going to be able to do pretty much whatever they want to on this map, it would appear. Silicon, even in significant quantities down in this southwest corner. Plenty of water available as well. Not too surprising, those were the two locations I was kind of seeing and considering myself. Deathtacticus rather attached to the carbon location with aluminum and a geotherm right next to it, whereas Pbhead, he is going to end up taking the obvious scientific location with plenty of water and steel very, very, very close by. He will have access to aluminum. It is going to be more difficult than Deathtacticus is. Deathtacticus getting a nice general scavenger start, but of course you do have to consider the fact that it is a scavenger up against a scientist, and Black Market isn't looking all that great for this. It's looking okay. It's all right. You've got pirates that'll discourage Pbhead from doing anything crazy, like putting glass furnaces down separated from his base. You've got slowdown strikes, which can actually be used against scientists, which is fantastic. But then you're looking at something like mules are kind of okay, I guess. They don't see a whole lot of use. You're looking at underground nukes, almost no impact against a scientist whatsoever most of the time. And then spies will help you avoid those goon squads, but most of the tools you use aren't going to be hit by you want to use aren't going to be affected by a goon squad anyway, so why do you care? We do have an exceedingly quick geothermal plant for Deathtacticus. This is one of those times when I don't really mind that sort of thing too much. He's overproducing carbon and aluminum anyway. That's just kind of what happens when you take quite that much. But he did not defend it a little too fast on that geothermal plant. It does get mutinied away almost immediately by Pbhead. Deathtacticus could take it back, is choosing not to. Instead, just sits on the glass that he's got. He does not want to allow Pbhead to buy up that glass easily, so he is just sitting on it and waiting. He has no interest whatsoever in taking that geothermal plant back. Alright, it is worth noting that we've got a bit of an interesting neutral colony this game. We'll check out Deathtacticus' upgrade in just a second. Some power consumption, some chemical consumption, some glass consumption, in addition to the 4 habitats that we've got going on. So a bit of a mix. There is no one resource itself that is going to just get sky high because of the neutral colony this game. Instead, we've just got a spread, and like 2 of them are power. So that might have minimal impact on this game compared to what we've seen in some other games over the course of this tournament. I'm very curious about the fact that Pbhead has committed 2 claims to aluminum this game. He did, of course, have an extra to spare, considering he was founding second. However, you do have to kind of wonder about it, considering his opponent has very easy access to aluminum, is absolutely flooding it as well. Both players producing such a ridiculous amount of this resource that isn't worth anything, and my concern is that for Pbhead, it's separated from his base. He can't transition it. Deathtacticus, he's just going to develop a solid amount of aluminum, no idea how much, but a significant quantity, and then possibly could just transition out of his aluminum mines. Just doesn't have to care. Changes them into something that'll make money, sits on enough aluminum that it won't hurt him long term, eventually makes the change back if at all necessary. Pbhead doesn't have that simple of an option. The only thing he can really transition into effectively is power. Deathtacticus, with his HQ level 3, it does look like he committed to acquiring quite a bit of water, making sure he can produce his life support resources without too much difficulty, and just putting down a couple of farms. Not a large amount of income from something like that. Just a moderate amount is what he'll be sitting on due to that. Might slow him down a little bit to HQ level 3, depending on what Pbhead is able to come up with for himself. That said, Pbhead also in farms a little bit more effectively, pulling in money due to the nature of being scientific from these tiles, relying very heavily on steel to go ahead and push through. Also very understandable. Steel typically a strong resource in almost any game. But this geotherm will slow him down significantly. 120 steel price on that is going to set him back from his upgrade, and he does need to be concerned about going ahead and pushing into this glass price that Deathtacticus has managed to raise to a very, very high price already at this stage of the game. $159 for that right now. Energy Vault Auction is a bit of an interesting one, considering both players have already moved into geothermal plants, plus 100 power backup and refills plus 1 per turn. Is a little bit odd if you're not wanting to rely on solar panels. Can kind of help out in those situations, but it just means that Pbhead, well, he did manage to acquire that. He is making a little bit more power, one would think. One would think. A little bit more power, right? Energy Vault, right? Not crazy. I know what an Energy Vault does. Refills +1 per turn. The power backup refills +1 per turn. So maybe it's just that he doesn't have enough power to refill the backup at this point. Maybe Energy Vault was adjusted just slightly to make it less powerful, as that was a quite desirable patent for an extended period of time. We do have electrolysis reactors coming down for Deathtacticus with his HQ level 4. That is going to be making him over $100 a second per tile, which is absolutely fantastic. That is the sort of money you want to be making as you look to push into the late stages of this game. Pbhead's still way behind. Way behind. I'm very concerned about him at this point. He is being forced to transition into reactors before upgrading. Not something you want to have to do. Slowdown Strike immediately comes down on top of those, making sure that not a whole lot of income is going to be coming in. This has the combined effect of making sure that Deathtacticus gets the best prices on the oxygen and fuel resource. It's going to make things even more difficult for Pbhead moving forward, as he still has to secure so much glass to go ahead and get to HQ level 4 to keep up with Deathtacticus. And Deathtacticus is not giving any indications that he has any interest whatsoever in reducing that price and making this objective any easier for Pbhead. Instead, directly choosing to compete with his opponent. Looks like Pbhead is making a small attempt at pirating away some resources, just trying to get something back in his favor. Unfortunately for him, it's just pretty much water that he's picking up. Not a particularly effective strategy, one has to think, as of course water is not overly expensive at this moment. So just 100 water being taken away from Deathtacticus, not worth a whole lot of cash. As you can see, water still down at $16, and Deathtacticus has a fairly significant stockpile of it ready to go. Pbhead getting back into the money with his electrolysis reactors, still far behind when it comes to upgrading. He cannot pull in enough glass to actually make this happen. Meanwhile, Deathtacticus, he has correctly identified that he has food production and his opponent does not. So he is simply purchasing into the food as much as is reasonable, trying to drive that price as high as he can, so that Pbhead just consumes more and more, gets as much debt as Deathtacticus can hand on over to him. Cold fusion coming on out. Buildings are powered with water. Nobody interested? Alright. Pbhead bidding 6,000 on that. Long term, probably will be worth that, but of course we do have a power surplus going on right now. So in the short term, we're not really looking at that having a significant impact on this game. Already water has dipped below power. That is just $6,000 of debt sitting in Pbhead's pocket doing nothing right now. However, he doesn't have a whole lot of debt going on at this point. It is unlikely that that auction will be a significant hindrance to him moving forward. Pbhead getting back into farms, food obviously looking fantastic from his perspective, unaware of the fact, possibly, that Deathtacticus is holding that price high. Not a whole lot of production coming from Deathtacticus, so Pbhead might suspect that would be the realistic price. However, once Pbhead has made his move into farms and the buildings have completed, Deathtacticus crashes out the price. And now he has to think about what he would like to do with all of this money. Offworld markets are acceptable but not exceptional this game. An upgrade is a possibility. It is one he is going to be looking at moving into. I would be very surprised to not see a large amount of glass production come down before too terribly long. We are also going to see a little bit more water being collected by Deathtacticus, as he has been relying on those water resources for, well, basically the entire game at this stage. One more claim remaining. He has taken the water. He has taken the 2 glass furnaces. He is taking an additional silicon quarry to make sure that he has plenty of silicon coming in for his glass. And what will the last step be? He's already got 2 geotherms secured, more than enough power for a scavenger in most games. The last claim did go out. Maybe it was that quarry? Nah, it is this farm up here. This was the last claim that Deathtacticus committed to, making sure to get down plenty of farms, and he will be moving into a hacker array now. Definitely a nice, less risky tool than the Offworld market, especially in a game with mutinies available and slowdown strikes. Just moving into that hacker array doesn't cost a whole lot, usually if things go too terribly wrong. Not a major investment, but enough that you can turn your money into a lot of money and move forward very, very effectively for the remainder of the game. Pbhead still stuck back at HQ level 4. He has moved into some glass furnaces of his own, but these slowdown strikes are most certainly hampering his ability to actually keep up in this game. It's good use of the black market by Deathtacticus. Nice that he has access to a tool that will actually affect his scientific opponent in a significant fashion. More glass furnaces coming down for Pbhead, who has finally made it to HQ level 5. This still leaves Deathtacticus with a significant lead, as Pbhead will have to secure all the rest of his new claims. He'll have to spend cash for that. Might have to consider transitioning into a little bit more steel as that price goes up and up and up and up and up. And a high iron tile gets auctioned off for 8,000. Once again, likely not going to be a significant impact this game. Deathtacticus could take that, but I realistically wouldn't want to do anything but drop a solar panel on it. That is so far away from his base, and it will be getting an iron mine. It should be stated that fuel is at a very, very low price right now, and these players are kind of leaving it there for the time being, so perhaps this will not cost a lot of money, but it is something that Deathtacticus will have to pay significant amounts of attention to long term. Pbhead making a move into a pleasure dome, usually not a particularly strong option in a 1v1 scenario, unlikely to make a significant amount of money. We'll check on it in just a second here once it lands. On top of that, we haven't seen anything crazy like a virtual reality auction. Only $109 out of that pleasure dome. That said, I say only $109, but if we check the rest of these buildings, the glass furnaces are the only things that have any chance right now, it would seem, of keeping up with that. Glass furnaces making 150 over here, 180 down here, depending on their particular adjacency bonuses. Soon enough, that will crash out unless someone makes a serious move into something like an off-world market, it would seem. So I don't mind the pleasure dome all that much, but it is a rather large commitment of resources for something without being a ridiculously large payoff the way that the hacker array has the opportunity to be this game. The questioning thing about the hacker array this game is that there are spies available, and spies, of course, are exceptionally strong against the hacker array. And in fact, Deathtacticus just says, forget it, scraps the hacker array. Never got a single hack off. Most he possibly did was make Pbhead buy into some awkward food and then have to sell out of it again, and instead he is going to be transitioning into that off-world market. This tells Pbhead that, well, time for me to get aggressive. Slowdown strikes are still on the map. I can use them very effectively myself. Mutinies are there as well. So I would not be too terribly surprised to see Pbhead get aggressive against this tile. He knows it's an off-world market coming down. Black market is up. Every single second that goes by where Pbhead has not purchased something from this is a serious mistake, and it just keeps going and going and going. There we are. The spy allowing the slowdown strike to know where this off-world market is very easily. Everything, nothing crazy like holograms this game. Also knowing that it's goon squatted so that the slowdown strike is what's used rather than attempting something like a power surge to prevent the off-world market from building. Nanotech coming out. Typically a pretty valuable patent, and 1v1's a little bit less so, depending on exactly what the situation is. Of course, no more ability to scrap off-world markets for extra cash has left Nanotech behind just a little bit, but still a strong resource to have in your arsenal. Always nice to be able to a little bit more safely transition out of something like your carbon quarries, as we see Deathtacticus doing here this game. See, it is interesting. I do believe we've got... well, we've got significant amounts of carbon coming in for Pbhead. That would kind of typically indicate dry ice somewhere being collected, although I'm not seeing that at this moment. Elemental quarries is what it's telling me. Ah, he's got two of them right here. Just going for elemental quarries, I think, is almost certainly a very serious mistake here. Yes, he has access to a lot of carbon. That's fantastic. Who cares? Carbon is worth $1. Oxygen is up at 109, 110. That's why I was thinking it would probably be dry ice that was creating that carbon income, but no. It is just these quarries. I think that's just another slight mistake out of Pbhead this game. Meanwhile, up in Deathtacticus area of the map, we do see that a food launch is currently in the works, 90 seconds until it finishes at the current rate. Of course, that will turn into something more like, I'm going to say like 35 seconds? Once this strike has ended, somewhere along those lines. Not a huge deal. Slowdown strike does land onto Pbhead's own off-world market, and Pbhead just continually feels like he is one step behind this game. Steel mills will allow him to make back a significant amount of the money that he committed into this off-world market, but it is just, of course, making that back. I'm also a bit concerned about the fact that we've got a water pump down here instead of these electrolysis reactors. Just small things here and there that feel like they could have been improved to give him more of a better situation in this game to actually develop some advantages rather than just always seeming to run behind. Should also be noted that these electronics factory is actually making a fair amount of money for Deathtacticus, although they are not the best building available to him right now, as that does appear to be the electrolysis reactor. Maybe glass a bit overproduced this game. Deathtacticus still sitting on 167 of that. Pbhead at none, and it is only at $100, of course. Deathtacticus is 72% of the way to what he needs for the rest of the 4 stocks remaining. He is just starting these purchases. Basically, the moment that the first launch goes off, he decides, all right, it's time to go. My opponent's in an Offworld. That's a whole lot of money committed that he absolutely will not get back at this point. Deathtacticus just says, all right, match me. Can you get 4 before I get 6? The answer does look like it's unlikely to be yes. 5 stock purchases now for Deathtacticus. This auction means literally nothing this game, and I do expect that we are going to see either a launch or a canceled launch. Canceled launch a bit more likely, I have to say. Launch gets canceled, food gets sold. We're just waiting on a hair more cash to come in. Deathtacticus actually at that 100%. And game number 1 goes over to Deathtacticus. Very, very simple and straightforward game for him, realistically. Those slowdown strikes, absolutely incredible. That game, especially in combination with the spies, just managing to use them to maintain a constant advantage over his scientific opponent. Maybe a few missteps here and there from Pbhead, just small things that we were seeing that could have been done better, could have been done more effectively. A lot of wasted, useless tiles out there, it felt like, for significant portions of the game. And all of that combined hands that victory on over to Deathtacticus. Alright guys, don't think there's a whole lot more to talk about there. We can check the black market very quickly just to see exactly how much of it was happening this game. Det not playing a super significant role there. So 12 uses of the black market from Deathtacticus, 8 from Pbhead. That looks about right for the most part. There was a nuke that went out that game that I did not pay significant amounts of attention to. I do believe it was on one of these silicon quarries, knocked it down from a high to a low, was what it looked like, which was significant, but not necessarily a complete game changer. Just an interesting little use of an underground nuke against a scientific player, which is something we don't see all that often. No mules. No mules whatsoever. Would have loved to see maybe a mule purchase, honestly, instead of a nuke. I don't really know. Just, they're so good for getting you over those humps when resources are getting kind of awkward. You know what I mean? Okay. Time to get on out of here. Let's get on to game number 2.